an extremely awkward confrontation of the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, and Satya Nadella by podcaster, we'll call him Mr. Brad. We'll talk about all of this. There are critical takeaways from this interview. We're going to talk about a glut of chips, which could be a red flag for chip companies. Or is it? We're going to talk about Sam Altman's goals and why that could affect chips massively. We'll talk about Microsoft's strategy and how it's very, very different from OpenAI. You might think, would Microsoft invest in OpenAI? Satya Nadella in this interview basically says we could write down the OpenAI investment to worthless, and he'll still show you how they're going to make money. We're going to talk about that. We'll also talk about how I think Nvidia is protecting its moat and how different the mindsets of these two founders, or these two executives, I should say, are. Now, what's really important as well is that there's a lot of drama going on about how Sam Altman responded. Sam Altman has no shortage of haters. A lot of people think he's like so evil that he's a murderer. There are other people who say he's just a liar. And then there are other people who say, like, no, these are people just hating on Sam Altman's rise. I'm going to break all of this down, but first, we're going to start with this awkward moment, and then we're going to go into the details. As you go into this awkward moment, I want you to have an analogy in the back of your mind, because I think it's useful to have these numbers so you can make them relatable. Let's say you are working part-time at Jamba Juice, which I used to do, and you're earning $2,500 a year. Okay, that's not even enough money after taxes for 1 month of rent, but whatever. I guess it depends on what you're renting, I suppose. But anyway, let's say you're making $2,500 a year, $2,500. That's pretty low, right? But now, let's say that by the end of the year or the end of next year, you're making a commitment to your parents while you're making $2,500 a year that you're going to spend $130,000, at the end of the year or the end of next year. Rightfully so, people are going to go, bro, dude, your revenue is $2,500. Your net is zero or negative. How the hell are you going to spend $130,000 by the end of the year? Okay, that's the same proportion of what's going on with OpenAI, where OpenAI is like, yeah, boys, we's going to spend $1.3 trillion, and we got revenue somewhere around $20 billion, plus or minus. We don't know. We know it's more than 13, and we know they have a goal of getting to, that's their internal goal, the public thinks it'll take longer, of getting to $100 billion by 2027. So if their revenue's 30 bill now, maybe they double it in 26, and maybe they double it again in 27, and they get to over 100 bill by the end of 27, if there's that much of a doubling capacity. But going back to the analogy, how are you saying, hey, we're going to commit to $500 billion to Nvidia and $300 billion to AMD and Oracle, so you kind of have to divide those, $250 billion to Microsoft Azure over the next 4 to 5 years. How are you going to spend all that money when your revenue is so low, right? That's where the criticism comes from. And a lot of people say that when the CEO reacts in a frustrated manner of people questioning him on these spending commitments, it's a red flag. Other people say this guy's just tired of being asked the same thing over and over again, but it's worth watching the interaction. So without further ado, let's play it.
Revenues are still a reported $13 billion in 2025. And Sam, on your live stream this week, you talked about this massive commitment to compute, right? 1.4 trillion over the next 4 or 5 years with, big commitments, 500 million to Nvidia, 300 million to AMD and Oracle, 250 billion to Azure. So I think the single biggest question I've heard all week and hanging over the market is how can the company with 13 billion in revenues make 1.4 trillion of spend commitments? And you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer.
Big moment here. This is where you see Satya realize this is an awkward slam, and Satya doesn't really know the best way to respond other than just by trying to laugh it off to cool the tensions, because this is early into a podcast that's about to get really awkward. Maybe it's no surprise that soon after this, Sam Altman ends up dropping out, but you can even see Brad is kind of like, bro, this is a little rude, man. Like, I'm going to smile just to give us an exit here, but clearly Sam Altman is pissed. He's tired of hearing this, so rather than really addressing it, he's lashing out. Now, in fairness, he does end up addressing it, but the way he addresses it makes it very clear that the mindset that Sam Altman has at OpenAI is way, way different from the mindset of a CEO of a business that actually makes a ton of money like Microsoft. I want to be clear about this. Sam Altman's business generates maybe revenue of, call it $20 billion a year. They're netting essentially zero. So they're making no money, right? They've got a great product, basically making no money. This is very different from the business mindset of Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella's point of view is, listen, we want to have a low ARPU, high use product. Okay, what does that mean? It means low average revenue per user, but we have a lot of users at a high margin, so we basically commoditize intelligence by plugging it into Word, Excel, Outlook. We sell it to you for a small monthly fee and you're using it every single day. That's how we make money, baby. And in fairness, they kill it. I mean, Nvidia kills it more, but Microsoft absolutely kills it. Understand, this is their annual, this is a sort of a consolidated statement, a summary of their operations. Revenue, $281 billion. Okay, they take $101 billion to the bottom line after taxes. That's a 36% margin net. That is really, really good. It is a lot of money. Microsoft has mastered how to sell you Windows and sell you monthly subscriptions or storage subscriptions and make a little bit of money off a lot of people. And that's how they end up with these 36% margins and over $100 billion of revenue. I'm sorry, net income, right? They literally have probably 20x the income that OpenAI has, and they actually bring infinitely more money to the bottom line. Now, of course, the reason people are so excited about OpenAI is because they call it the growth story. Satya Nadella doubles down and says, listen, we don't really care so much about this direction that Sam Altman is going. OpenAI could go bankrupt. He essentially says this. He says, we could write down our $13 billion investment into OpenAI to $0. And it doesn't matter because we get a free license, essentially, at that point, to utilize OpenAI in our Copilot products and in our other products, and those give us the service that people want. Functional AI, essentially, today at a low cost. So Satya, very much taking the business point of view here. Like, we don't need to worry about this AGI stuff or make bets on that. We're just going to make money today. In fact, there is a fundamental difference, and we get a little bit mathy here, I'll explain it, but there's such a fundamental difference between the two that I want you to think about this quote and see the difference, and I'll explain it. Satya Nadella says, intelligence is the log of compute. And so as costs for compute come down through more efficient chips or whatever, we're going to be able to get more intelligence slowly, okay? That's, simply put onto a little basic chart. It looks like this. When you first start with AI, you get a lot of intelligence, apparent intelligence. We'll talk about that in a moment. But then for every doubling of compute, you're only getting incrementally more intelligence. This is a very basic log curve. Sam Altman says, unfortunately, it's more likely that the log of intelligence actually equals the log of compute. Very complicated. If you break it down, it actually gets very simple. He's essentially saying we're going to cancel out this logarithmic curve. We're not actually going to see compute costs go down, and we're going to keep spending like drunk sailors until we get artificial general intelligence. So when you take the log of intelligence equals the log of compute and you simplify this, you're basically saying, even if compute costs come down, we're still going to spend exponentially more in line with where we hope to grow intelligence because our goal is AGI, artificial general intelligence. And this is going to be a game changer for chips, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But let me break this down so you can kind of maybe pick your side. So as an investor, I look at this and go, okay, Microsoft knows how to print money on selling AI packaged down into the most basic level to everybody. OpenAI is going to keep burning every bit of money they have because they're trying to go for AGI. Now we have to understand the difference between the two, and I'll give you a very simple difference in terms of achieving it. I think you already know artificial and general intelligence would basically be this superhuman style of knowledge that can come up with new discovery and new content itself. Whereas AI we have today isn't really that. Here's a basic summary of what AI is today. Okay? Let's take this cup, for example. Here, we'll zoom in a little bit. All right? Let's take this cup. Let's say we fill this cup with all written text, all audio recorded speech, and all video that exists in the world. Okay? Then we stir it up, using hundreds of thousands of Blackwell, Nvidia chips, and H100s. We stir it all up together. And then we tell a computer, go, hey, understand this cup, which technically is a way of understanding the world view of how these things interplay. So we're now going to see a sample of all of this. We're going to skim a sample of all of it. Got it. Okay. That's roughly the bitterness. That's roughly how it tastes. This is how things function. This is the utility of it. Got it. Now that I have a skimmed sample of all of that content, I can probably generate answers and pictures based on what I've seen, or video based on what I've seen in the real world. Like, I understand that when a gun fires, when a little kitten is holding a gun, even though we know what a kitten looks like, we never have videos of a kitten holding a gun, but we know how kittens act, and we know how guns act, and we know when the trigger is pulled, there's recoil. We could kind of generate what that would roughly look like together, sort of like our imagination, right? That's really what it is. We take the worldview of how we understand the world, and then we generate answers based on probabilities of this is likely how things are going to be. That's AI today. Okay, it's not actually generally intelligent yet where it can generate its own solutions. This is why Sam Altman talks about these haters on X, because when Sam Altman goes, look, we just cracked this insane scientific puzzle or this major science problem, and then other people respond on X, they're like, actually, you just lifted all of the answers from this PhD who posted it on this obscure blog over here. Here are the receipts. You guys are a scam. Okay, so this is why people like Elon Musk say it's scam Altman. Right. Anyway, so now you understand that that's what AI is today. It's a pattern-based and probabilistic-based worldview that has skimmed the world, and it can generate answers from there based on roughly how things should work. The more creative you get, the more it hallucinates and the more it breaks down. This is how we get hallucinations in AI. The more encyclopedic it is, the fewer hallucinations we get. Okay, simple. Sam Altman is taking the mindset that if we just keep spending on computers, we will get artificial general intelligence eventually in our pocket. Well, he specifically said in their laptop, but presumably if you can have it on a laptop, you'll be able to have it on a phone in the future. Sam Altman actually says at that point, it'll actually become somewhat depressing what you end up seeing with data centers, because data centers are going to have spent all this money on data centers that you won't actually need because people have their data center in their pocket. That's if you believe the Sam Altman point of view. He argues there will be a glut of H100s and Blackwell chips in the future. Okay, fine. Satya Nadella is, man, we don't really care about the future, bro. Listen, dude, I'm a CEO. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to print money. You guys go spend all the money you want. We're just going to focus on providing something to people right now, and we're going to make money. Which, I get that, okay? So, like, side tangent, at my company, reinvest.co or househack.com, it's the same company, just slightly different branding because of the products we're launching within the next few months. We're of the mindset that we can transform how people invest in real estate, whether they're investors, they're flippers, they're home buyers, how they renovate real estate, how they get insights into how a purchase or investment or a renovation changes their net worth. And then we actually turn real estate into a computational problem rather than an emotional problem, or at least we augment people's emotions with math, right? We think we could sell that as a product or a software as a service and make a lot of money. That's our opinion. That's not relying on AGI. That's relying on human intelligence today, for example, like what I do in real estate, and training models to react to new properties or renovation problems with my mindset as an investor in real estate. That's what we're doing. We think we're taking very much the same approach as Satya Nadella, which is great. How can we take the technology we have today and make it the most useful and make as much money as possible with it? I lean towards that direction. I support what Satya Nadella is saying here. I think it's a little bit whimsical at this point to assume that the AI we have today is capable of getting to AGI. And unfortunately, that makes me concerned that Sam Altman is probably overly optimistic on his revenue projections. And therefore, at some point, the Sam Altman spending will slow. And when the Sam Altman spending slows is probably also when we're going to see spend optimization at companies like Microsoft and Amazon, and we'll start seeing layoffs. Oh, wait, we already are. Because eventually, we will use AI to optimize our workflows. And a lot of people are going to get fired. Not because one person can now replace the work of 10, it's rather that one person can optimize the work that they're doing so much more rapidly, and there doesn't necessarily have to be more work, it's just we could do more with fewer people. This is more of a reference to just because you have the capability of now more time does not necessarily mean you're going to increase revenue more, right? It just means the work that you need to get done, you can get done a little bit faster with artificial intelligence. Great. So this gives you the worldview of these two individuals, and it separates the two here. Now, Brad asks, is there any chance of a compute glut coming within the next 2 or 3 years? And he asks Jensen Huang this and talks a little bit, he talks a little bit about it in this podcast. He says, when he asked Jensen if there's any chance of a chip glut in the next 2 or 3 years, Jensen's response was, no chance. Not a chance that we're going to have too many chips in the next 2 or 3 years. So we probably still have a bull cycle here of spend on this hope of AGI. So this is where you kind of pick your side. During this hope of AGI spend, do you just park your money as an investment with companies that are trying to make artificial intelligence revenue with practical applications, like either what we're doing in HouseHack, Reinvest, you can go invest there if you want, read the offering circular, reinvest.co, househack.com, same company, or Microsoft or whatever? Or do you believe in sort of the OpenAI point of view and invest in those AGI plays at the valuations that they have now? That's important to consider. Now, why did I mention earlier that Nvidia has a potential moat that might fade? So based on this idea that there's not going to be a glut of chips in the next 2 or 3 years, I think Jensen is of the mindset that their moat will stay strong for the next 2 or 3 years because we can't manufacture enough of these chips. Intel got one of the first shipments of one of the most advanced lithography machines from ASML. And I think one of the reasons Intel has been doing so well is because people are realizing we actually have a shortage of being able to manufacture these chips. And that's probably how Nvidia gets, a 72% gross margin and a 56% net margin. They make way more money than Microsoft on a net basis because they have such a moat on chip manufacturing. It's not just chip design that's good or CUDA, but it's also, I think they have a moat on chip manufacturing. Think about it like this. If Nvidia, before the AI boom, tells TSMC, you guys make 100 chips. 25 of the chips you make, percentage-wise, let's just say, 25 of the chips you make are advanced AI chips. We want your manufacturing capacity for 20 of those. So call it roughly 80%, right? Well, now there's an AI boom, and other companies are like, hey, we want some of that 25 that you dedicate towards AI chips. We want some of that. And TSMC says, sorry, we already have a long-term commitment with Nvidia. You'll have to wait for that other 5 to come available, other 5% or whatever, or you have to wait for us to open new fabs or go to a company like Intel. That's, I think, one of the ways that Nvidia has a really big secret moat, is it's not necessarily just the quality or CUDA, but I think there's an extra bonus moat of the fact that they have the supply chain on lock, and it's just going to take time for that supply chain to butter out, which eventually those Nvidia margins are going to come down because those margins are too juicy not to want to compete it away. That's why Amazon makes their Trainium chips or Google makes their Tensor processors, their TPUs, right? they want some of those margins. It's much cheaper to make your own chip and then run your own chip than pay Nvidia a 56% net margin, 72% gross margin. Way cheaper to just make your own chip. But then when you call TSM, you go, I want to make my own chip. They're like, great, we'll get to you in 5 years when we open up more manufacturing space because Nvidia already has it all on lock. And then what do? All right, Nvidia, we'll take some of those chips. You like have no choice right now, right? So, and I'm biased towards Nvidia here. I've got lots of over 7 figures of Nvidia shares. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be bearish here on Nvidia. I'm saying for now, that Nvidia moat is still glorious. And that's why I have a $300 price target on Nvidia. That said, I am strongly of the mindset that the people like Satya Nadella, they're going to be the winners in this big revolution because they're focusing on making money today by providing great value with actual artificial intelligence that we could use without betting on, well, frankly, AGI. I think Sam Altman is, unfortunately, he has seen so many breakthroughs going from GPT-2 to 3 to 3.5 to 5. He's of this impression that these breakthroughs are going to be exponential. I actually think the progression that we've seen is actually much more logarithmic, where, maybe we saw this jump from 2 to 3 or to 3.5, and then, now we're, then we get our 4 or 4, 5, and 5. We're on this part of the curve. And this is still great for companies like Nvidia for now. It's going to continue to be great for companies like Microsoft. But I think Sam Altman thinks we're going to have an exponential result here in intelligence. And that's where I can't align with Sam Altman. So Satya argues that today we are still actually not even worried about not having enough chips. We're actually more worried about not having enough power, which indicates we're still relatively early in the normalization of this supply chain. So there's a lot of money still to flow into this. We're still, I think, relatively early in this. Will it all normalize when people realize, all right, we're probably not going to get to AGI anytime soon? Of course. In the meantime, is Microsoft going to keep cranking freaking money? Yeah. And that's what I got out of this interview. Even though it was really awkward when Sam got drilled, and this was sort of Satya's face during it, I think it helps establish that there are two styles of investing that you could take here. You take the certain revenue that you could get now from AI, or you make a bet on AGI. That's my point of view. And that's actually where I think to some extent, we are going to get humanoid robots. There's no question there. But I think to some extent, the amount of breakthroughs that we're actually going to need for AI robots to be functional will probably take another decade. So this is where you kind of have to evaluate, all right, do I position my portfolio to where I can make money now, or am I going to bet on that future in the decade because it's inevitable? I actually kind of do think it's inevitable. We're going to have humanoid robots everywhere. I just think it's going to take a whole lot longer than people think. FSD in cars is one of the reasons why we can think that, because, well, as we find, everything takes longer than we think. Anyway, this gives a sort of an overview of my take on artificial intelligence, this interview, and hopefully you learned a lot. A lot of thinking went into this video, and hopefully it's a nice consolidation for you. If you have any questions, leave a comment in the comments down below. Consider subscribing to the video, consider sharing the video, and then of course, this video is not a solicitation, but if you do want to invest in HouseHack or reinvest with our real estate artificial intelligence on its way, make sure you check out reinvest.co and read the offering circular. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, good luck.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.